The Empire had ruled the stars for over 5,000 years. Their ships were the fastest. Their weapons were the deadliest. Their soldiers were the most feared warriors in the known galaxy. From the burning deserts of Prime to the frozen moons of the system, every species had learned to bow before the might of the High Commander stood on the observation deck of his flagship, the Dominion's Wrath, watching the stars drift past the reinforced viewing port. He was an impressive specimen of his kind, standing nearly 3 meters tall with 4 powerful arms covered in iridescent scales that shifted from deep purple to black depending on the light. His 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on his elongated skull, gleamed with the cold intelligence that had allowed him to rise through the ranks of the Imperial military. Behind him, the bridge crew worked in silent efficiency. Officers monitored weapon systems, navigation charts, and communication relays. The soft hum of the ship's massive engines provided a constant backdrop to their activities. This was a vessel built for war, and everyone aboard knew it. "High Commander," a voice called from behind him. Turned to face Sub-Commander, his second in command and one of the few officers he trusted completely. Was smaller than most, but what he lacked in physical presence, he made up for with his brilliant tactical mind. "What is it?" asked. Approached with a data tablet clutched in his 4 hands. His scales had taken on a pale blue color which recognized as a sign of nervousness. This was unusual, was rarely nervous about anything. "The scouts have returned from the Orion Arm," reported. "They have identified a new target for expansion. A small planet in an unremarkable star system. The indigenous species calls it Earth." Mandibles clicked with interest. "Tell me about them." "They call themselves humans. They are a relatively young species. They only discovered faster-than-light travel about 50 of their years ago. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. They have colonized their moon and the 4th planet in their system, but their expansion has been slow and limited." "How many of them are there?" "Approximately 12 billion on there, with another 3 billion spread across their colonies." Nodded slowly. 15 billion was a significant population, but the Empire had conquered worlds with far more inhabitants. They had held nearly 50 billion when the Imperial fleet arrived, and it had fallen in less than a month. "What are their military capabilities?" asked. Hesitated, his scales shifted to an even paler shade of blue. "That is where things become complicated, High Commander." "Explain." "Our scouts were unable to gather detailed intelligence on their military. The humans detected our surveillance drones and destroyed them before they could complete their scans. However, we were able to access their global communication networks. What we found was disturbing." Eyes narrowed. "Disturbing how?" "The humans have spent their entire existence at war with each other, High Commander. Their history is a continuous record of conflict. They have developed and deployed weapons capable of destroying their entire species multiple times over. They have killed hundreds of millions of their own kind in organized warfare. Even now, with the threat of extinction hanging over them, they still maintain massive military forces pointed at each other." "They fight among themselves," laughed a harsh rattling sound. "Then they will be easy to conquer. A species divided against itself cannot stand against the might of the Empire." "That was my initial assessment as well," said carefully. "But then I began researching what other species have said about the humans. That is what concerns me." He handed the data tablet too. The High Commander looked down at the screen, which displayed a collection of reports and warnings from various alien civilizations. "The collective advises extreme caution when dealing with humans," explained. "Their ambassador visited Earth 20 cycles ago and returned with a recommendation that all contact with the species be avoided. He described them as fundamentally unstable in a way that makes them unpredictable and dangerous." Scrolled through the reports. "They are cowards. They surrendered to us without a single shot fired." "Yes, High Commander, but look at what the consortium says." They were not cowards. They were one of the few species that had actually resisted the conquest, holding out for nearly a decade before their worlds were finally subdued. Their military analysts were considered among the best in the galaxy. They have designated the human system as a restricted zone, continued. They explicitly warn against any military engagement with the species. They say that the humans have spent so long fighting each other that they have perfected the art of warfare in ways that defy logical analysis. Perfected warfare? Scoffed. They cannot even leave their own star system in significant numbers. How could they possibly pose a threat to us? There is more, High Commander. The ancient records of the mention the humans. This gave pause. They were a legendary civilization that had ruled the galaxy long before they rose to power. They had possessed technology that made even the most advanced current species look primitive, and they had vanished completely, leaving behind only ruins and scattered archives. What do the records say? His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. They say that they observed the humans for many generations before deciding to make contact. They studied their wars, their weapons, their culture, and in the end, they chose to leave the humans alone. The records do not explain why, but there is a note in the archives, a single word repeated several times. What word? The closest translation would be dangerous. Stared at the data tablet for a long moment. Then he handed it back to with a dismissive gesture. Superstition and cowardice, he declared. They surrendered without fighting, they were defeated, and they are extinct. If any of them had shown true strength, perhaps their warnings would carry weight. But I will not be intimidated by the fears of lesser civilizations. High Commander, I urge caution. Perhaps we should send a diplomatic mission first. Test the humans. Learn more about them before committing to a military campaign. Diplomacy is for the weak, said. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. We arrive, we conquer, and we rule. That is how it has always been. That is how it will always be. He turned back to the viewing port, his 4 eyes fixed on the distant stars. Prepare the invasion fleet. We will add Earth to the Empire's domain within a single rotation. Bowed his head in submission, but his scales remained that troubling shade of pale blue. As you command, High Commander. 3 weeks later, the invasion fleet assembled at the edge of the Orion Arm. 347 warships gathered in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the dark metal that was the hallmark of Imperial construction. Each vessel bristled with weapons capable of reducing cities to ash. Together, they represented the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. High Commander stood on the bridge of the Dominion's Wrath, surveying his fleet with satisfaction. This would be a glorious conquest. The humans would fall like all the others had fallen before them, and his name would be added to the list of great commanders who had expanded the borders of the Empire. All ships report ready for hyperspace jump, announced from his station. Excellent, signal the fleet. We enter the human system in standard attack formation. The target is the 3rd planet from their star. We will establish orbital superiority and then begin the ground assault. What are our rules of engagement, High Commander? Considered the question. Minimal restraint. If the humans resist, demonstrate our power by destroying one of their major population centers. That should convince them to surrender quickly. Nodded, though his scales had taken on that pale blue color again. And if they do not surrender? Then we will destroy another city, and another, until they learn the futility of resistance. The order was transmitted across the fleet. 347 ships activated their hyperspace drives in perfect synchronization. Reality twisted and folded around them as they punched through the fabric of space, crossing light years in mere moments. They emerged on the outer edge of the human star system, near the orbit of a frozen dwarf planet that human charts labeled as Pluto. From here, they could see the distant yellow sun and the tiny points of light that were the planets orbiting it. Begin approach to the 3rd planet, ordered. Standard military speed. I want a full scan of their defenses before we enter weapons range. The fleet began its journey inward, moving in a formation that had been perfected over thousands of years of conquest. Scout ships ranged ahead, their sensors probing for any sign of resistance. Behind them came the heavy cruisers and battleships, their weapons charged and ready. And at the center of the formation, the Dominion's Wrath led the way, its massive bulk a symbol of dominance. Hours passed as they crossed the vast distances between planets. They passed the eighth planet, a blue gas giant with rings of ice and rock. They passed the seventh planet, tilted on its side with a pale green atmosphere. They passed the sixth planet, famous for its spectacular ring system that sparkled in the distant sunlight. "Sub-Commander," a sensor officer called out, "I am detecting unusual energy readings from the fifth planet." Move to examine the officer's display. "What kind of readings?" "Unknown. They appear to be artificial in origin, but they do not match any technology in our databases. The readings are coming from several locations in the asteroid belt between the fourth and fifth planets." "Mining operations, perhaps," suggested. "The humans are known to extract resources from asteroids." "Possibly, High Commander, but the energy signatures are unusually strong for mining equipment." Waved a dismissive claw. "Note the readings for later investigation. Our primary objective is the human. We will deal with their asteroid operations after we have secured the planet." The fleet continued its approach. They passed the fifth planet, a massive gas giant with a storm large enough to swallow the humans several times over. They passed the fourth planet, a red desert world where the humans had established their largest off-world colony. "Approximately 8 million humans detected on the fourth planet," reported. "They have constructed enclosed habitation domes and underground facilities. Their infrastructure appears basic but functional." "They will be easy to subdue once there falls," said. "Without support from Earth, these colonists will have no choice but to submit." As the fleet approached the third planet, found himself studying the small blue and white sphere with growing anticipation. It was beautiful, he had to admit. The swirling clouds, the deep blue oceans, the patches of green and brown land masses. It would make a fine addition to the Empire's holdings. "High Commander, I am detecting something strange," the sensor officer reported. "What now?" "The humans, they are not reacting to our presence." Turned sharply. "What do you mean?" "Our standard approach protocol calls for concealed arrival to maximize the element of surprise. But we are not attempting to hide our presence. A fleet of this size should have been detected by any civilization with basic sensor technology. Yet the humans are not responding. Their communication networks show increased activity, but none of it is directed at us. There are no evacuation orders, no military mobilization, no distress signals." "Perhaps they do not understand the threat," suggested. "They may not realize what our fleet represents." "Or perhaps they have already accepted defeat," said with satisfaction. "They know they cannot resist us, so they are not even trying." But somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that something was wrong. A species that had spent its entire existence fighting should not simply accept conquest without resistance. Even the most overmatched prey would struggle against a predator. It was instinct. It was nature. Why were the humans so calm? The fleet entered orbit around Earth. From this distance, could see the lights of human cities twinkling on the night side of the planet. He could see the tiny shapes of their satellites drifting through space. He could see the fragile beauty of a world that was about to experience the full might of conquest. "Launch the first wave," he ordered. "Target their largest population centers. Show them what happens to those who do not surrender to the Empire." 200 attack craft detached from the main fleet and screamed toward the planet's atmosphere. Each ship was crewed by veteran pilots who had participated in dozens of successful campaigns. They had burned cities on 100 worlds. They had broken the spirits of countless species. They were the instruments of imperial dominance. They entered the atmosphere in perfect formation, their hulls glowing with the heat of re-entry. The target was a massive city on the eastern coast of one of the planet's largest continents. Population, approximately 20 million humans. It would be a demonstration of power that the entire species would remember. The lead pilot armed his weapons and prepared to fire. And then something happened that they had never experienced in 5,000 years of conquest. They died. In the span of 30 seconds, all 200 attack craft were destroyed. They simply ceased to exist, torn apart by weapons that the sensors had not even detected. There was no warning, no chance to react, no opportunity to fight back. One moment they were there, and the next they were clouds of expanding debris raining down through the atmosphere. High Commander stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 200 ships, 800 of his best pilots, gone in half a minute. What happened, he demanded. What destroyed them? The bridge crew scrambled to analyze the data, was the first to piece together what had occurred. Orbital defense platforms, High Commander. The humans had them hidden throughout their satellite network. They were disguised as communication satellites and space debris. Our sensors did not identify them as weapons until they fired. That is impossible. Our sensors are the most advanced in the galaxy. Nothing can hide from them. The humans found a way, High Commander, and their weapons. We have never seen anything like them. They appear to be firing kinetic projectiles at relativistic speeds. The impacts are devastating. Our attack craft were destroyed before their shields could even activate. Gripped the railing of his command platform so hard that the metal began to bend. How many of these platforms are there? Unknown, they are reactivating their camouflage systems. We cannot track them. Then bombard the planet from orbit, level their cities, show them that their defenses are meaningless against a fleet of this size. But before the order could be carried out, the Dominion's wrath shuddered violently. Alarms blared across the bridge as damage reports flooded in from every section of the ship. Direct hit to the port side, a damage control officer screamed. Decks 40 through 60 are breached. We are venting atmosphere. Casualty reports coming in. High Commander, we have lost over 3,000 crew members. From what? Roared. We are 1,000,000 kilometers from the planet. Nothing should be able to hit us at this range. His face had gone pale, his scales now an almost white color that had never seen before. A single ship, High Commander. It appeared directly adjacent to our position without any warning. It fired a single shot and then vanished. Vanished? Where did it go? I do not know. It seemed to fold space around itself and disappear. Our tracking systems cannot follow it. Looked at the tactical display. A small icon showed where the human vessel had briefly appeared. It was tiny compared to his flagship, barely 1,000th of the mass of the Dominion's wrath, and yet it had wounded his ship with a single shot. Find it, he ordered. Find it and destroy it. High Commander, there are more of them. The tactical display was suddenly filled with new contacts. Human ships were appearing throughout the formation, seemingly materializing out of thin air. They would appear, fire devastating volleys into the nearest vessel, and then vanish before return fire could be targeted. They are using some form of localized faster-than-light travel, said, his voice shaking. They can jump short distances without building up a hyperspace field. We have no way to predict where they will appear next. The battle had barely begun, and already it was turning into a disaster. Ships were taking damage throughout the fleet. Some were destroyed outright, their hulls torn open by weapons that punched through shields like they were not even there. Others were crippled, drifting helplessly as their systems failed one by one. And through it all, the human ships danced through the formation like ghosts, striking and vanishing with terrifying precision. Pull back, ordered, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Order all ships to retreat to the outer system. We need to regroup and reassess. The fleet began to withdraw, but the humans did not let them escape easily. Every ship that turned to flee became a target. The human vessels pursued relentlessly, appearing and disappearing in a deadly game that they could not win. By the time the remnants of the invasion force reached the relative safety of the outer system, nearly 100 ships had been destroyed or disabled. The mighty fleet that had assembled with such confidence was now a battered collection of wounded survivors. High Commander stood in the ruins of his bridge, surrounded by the bodies of crew members who had been killed in the attacks. The Dominion's wrath had taken 17 direct hits during the retreat. Entire sections of the ship were now open to space. Fires burned in the lower decks. The proud flagship was barely holding together. High Commander, said quietly, approaching through the debris, we are receiving a transmission from the human military. They are offering to negotiate. laughed bitterly. Now they want to talk after they have butchered our fleet. Perhaps we should listen to what they have to say. What choice do we have? The mane flickered to life, displaying a human face. It was a female of the species, noted, with gray fur on her head and hard lines around her eyes. She wore a uniform decorated with symbols that he assumed indicated her rank. "I am Admiral Cole of the United Earth Defense Command," the human said. Her voice was calm and cold, showing no sign of the emotion that would have expected from a species under attack. "You have entered our territory without authorization and attacked our planet without provocation. Under normal circumstances, this would be considered an act of war." "We are the Empire," replied, trying to maintain his dignity despite the devastation around him. "We do not require authorization to go where we please." "I see, and how is that working out for you so far?" His mandibles clicked with suppressed rage, but he forced himself to remain composed. "What do you want, human?" "I want you to understand something, High Commander. What you have experienced today was not our full strength. It was not even close. The ships that attacked your fleet were patrol vessels, scouts, the smallest and weakest ships in our military. If we had deployed our actual warships, there would be nothing left of your fleet but debris." "You are bluffing." Admiral Cole smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "We received warnings about your species from several alien civilizations. They told us that you were conquerors, that you had enslaved dozens of worlds, that you would come for us eventually, so we prepared." "Prepared how?" "We spent the last 50 years building weapons specifically designed to fight a technologically superior enemy. Every mistake we made in our own wars, every lesson we learned from thousands of years of killing each other, we applied to our defense strategy. We studied the weaknesses of every military technology we could find information about, and then we created countermeasures." Felt a chill run through his body. "You knew we were coming." "We knew someone was coming. We did not know exactly who or when, but we knew it would happen eventually. The galaxy is full of species that take what they want from those who are weaker. We decided a long time ago that we would not be weak." "What do you want from us?" "I want you to leave. Take your surviving ships and return to your empire. Tell your leaders what happened here. Tell them that Earth is not a target for conquest. Tell them that if they ever send another fleet to our system, we will not be as merciful as we have been today." "Merciful?" gestured at the destruction around him. "You call this mercy?" "Yes, because right now, I could give the order to destroy every remaining ship in your fleet. My ships are already in position. One word from me, and you all die. But I am choosing not to give that order because I believe that you deserve a chance to learn from your mistake." Leaned close to and whispered, "High Commander, our sensors confirm what she is saying. There are human vessels surrounding our position. We cannot see them, but we can detect their weapons charging." Closed his 4 eyes and tried to process what was happening. He had commanded fleets that conquered entire star systems. He had broken the resistance of species that fought with desperate courage. He had never been defeated, not once in his entire career. Until now. "How?" he asked quietly. "How did you develop technology that can challenge ours? You are a young species. You have barely left it should have taken you thousands of years to reach this level of advancement." Admiral Cole's expression softened slightly. "That is something that your species never understood about us, High Commander, and it is why every civilization that has encountered us has learned to fear us." "What do you mean?" "You look at us and see a primitive species that fights among itself. You think our wars are a sign of weakness, but you are wrong. Our wars made us strong. Every conflict taught us something new about how to kill more efficiently. Every weapon we created was refined and improved over generations. We turned the art of destruction into a science." She paused and saw something ancient and terrible in her eyes. "Your empire has existed for 5,000 years, and in that time you have fought perhaps 100 wars of conquest. We have fought thousands of wars in just the last few centuries. We have killed more of our own kind than you have ever killed of any species. We have developed weapons that could end all life on our planet multiple times over, and we built them just to threaten each other." "That is insanity," said. Maybe, but it is the insanity that made us what we are. Every species in the galaxy has looked at us and seen a broken, violent, self-destructive race that should have destroyed itself long ago. And they were right. We should have, but we did not. We survived. And in the process of surviving ourselves, we became something that the galaxy has never seen before. What? Apex predators? The word hung in the air between them, felt his entire understanding of the galaxy shifting beneath him. You were not prepared for us, Admiral Cole continued. Your empire has conquered weaker species your entire existence. You have never faced an enemy that was truly dangerous. You have never fought someone who fights the way we fight, because no other species thinks the way we think. And how do you think? We think about war every single day. We study it. We dream about it. We tell stories about it to our children. War is not just something we do. It is part of who we are. It is woven into our culture, our art, our technology, our very identity. When we look at a new situation, our first instinct is to figure out how we could use it in a fight. When we develop new technology, we immediately start thinking about its military applications. She leaned forward, her eyes locked with. You cannot beat us, High Commander. Not because we are stronger or smarter or more advanced than you. You cannot beat us because we have spent our entire existence learning how to fight, and we are very, very good at it. Was silent for a long moment. The sounds of his dying ship filled the bridge. The groans of stressed metal, the hiss of leaking atmosphere, the distant cries of wounded crew members. All around him, the evidence of the most humiliating defeat in history. We will leave, he finally said. I will take my ships and return to the Empire. I will report what has happened here. Good, and one more thing, High Commander. What? Tell your people about the warnings. Tell them that the other civilizations were right to be afraid of us. Tell them that Earth is not a prize to be conquered. It is a trap, and anyone who tries to spring that trap will end up like your fleet. The transmission ended. The went dark. Turned to, who was standing nearby with an expression of shock on his face. Order all surviving ships to prepare for hyperspace jump. We are returning home. Yes, High Commander. What will you tell the Emperor? Looked out the viewing port at the distant blue planet that had shattered his fleet and his pride. The truth, I will tell him the truth, and I will recommend that the Empire add its name to the list of civilizations that warn others to stay away from Earth. Do you think he will listen? Remembered the cold certainty in Admiral Cole's eyes. He remembered the casual ease with which the human ships had torn his fleet apart. He remembered the ancient terror in the records. He will listen, said quietly, because if he does not, the Empire will learn the same lesson we learned today, and they will learn it the hard way. As the remnants of the invasion fleet limped toward the edge of the system, preparing to flee back to there, the human ships watched them go. The hunters were letting their prey escape, not out of weakness, but out of a calculated decision to send a message to the rest of the galaxy. Do not come to Earth. The Empire did not listen, but they would never make that mistake again. Meanwhile, on Earth, life continued as it always had. In cities around the world, humans went about their daily routines, barely aware that their planet had just survived an alien invasion. The news networks mentioned the attack briefly before moving on to other stories. Politicians gave speeches about the importance of defense spending. Children played games pretending to be the heroic pilots who had protected their world. For the humans, this was just another war, another enemy defeated, another threat neutralized. They did not celebrate or mourn or even think about it very much. They simply added it to the long list of conflicts in their history and moved on. Because that was what humans did. They fought, they won, and they kept going. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, the surviving ships raced toward home, carrying their wounded and their dead and their tales of horror. The soldiers aboard those ships would spend the rest of their lives having nightmares about what they had experienced. They would tell their children and their about the terrible day when the mighty Empire discovered that it was not the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. And in the archives of a dozen civilizations, the warnings about Earth were updated and expanded. New details were added about human weapons and tactics. New recommendations were made about avoiding the dangerous blue planet and its impossible inhabitants. Do not go to Earth, the warning said. The humans fight like nothing you have ever seen. The humans fight like they have nothing to lose. The humans fight like death itself. Stay away. Stay far, far away. Admiral Cole stood in her office at United Earth Defense Command headquarters in Geneva, looking out the window at the peaceful Swiss countryside. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks covered in snow that sparkled in the afternoon sun. It was beautiful, calm, serene. She thought about the aliens who had come to conquer her world. She thought about the terror in the commander's eyes when he realized how badly he had underestimated humanity. She thought about all the species that had looked at humans and seen nothing but a primitive, violent race that was barely worth noticing. They were all wronged. Humans were not primitive. They were patient. They had been preparing for this day for generations, building weapons in secret, developing technologies that the rest of the galaxy could not imagine. They had known that someday someone would come for them, and they had made sure they would be ready. The phone on her desk rang. She picked it up. Admiral Cole. It's Daniel. The voice belonged to Commander Daniel Marsh, her chief tactical officer. The fleet has left the system. All surviving ships have entered hyperspace. Any pursuit? No, ma'am. As you ordered, we let them go. They'll spread the word faster than we ever could. Good. What's our status? Minimal casualties. We lost 12 ships in the engagement, mostly patrol craft that got caught in crossfire. The planetary defense platforms performed beyond expectations. The Harbinger and its escorts never even had to fire. Cole nodded. The Harbinger was humanity's ultimate weapon, a ship so massive and powerful that it could destroy entire fleets by itself. It had been hiding behind Earth's moon during the battle, ready to deploy if the lighter forces failed to stop the invasion. In the end, it had not been needed. Stand down from alert status, she ordered, but keep the defense grid active. I want continuous monitoring of all approach vectors. If anything else comes into our system, I want to know about it immediately. Yes, ma'am, Admiral. Permission to speak freely. Go ahead. Do you think they'll come back? Cole considered the question. No, they've learned their lesson. But the galaxy is a big place, Daniel. There will be others, species that didn't hear the warnings, species that don't believe them, species that think they're special enough to succeed where they failed. And we'll be ready for them. We'll be ready. We always have been. We always will be. She ended the call and turned back to the window. Outside, the world went on as it always had. Children played in parks. Workers went to their jobs. Couples walked hand in hand along the streets. None of them knew how close they had come to losing everything. And that was exactly how wanted it. The military existed so that ordinary people could live ordinary lives, never having to worry about the horrors that lurked in the darkness between stars. That was the burden of command. That was the responsibility she had accepted when she put on the uniform. Protect humanity, at any cost, by any means necessary. And if that meant becoming the thing that monsters feared, then so be it. Admiral Cole smiled as she watched the sunset paint the mountains in shades of orange and red. Tomorrow, there would be reports to file and politicians to brief and allies to reassure. Tomorrow, the machinery of government would demand her attention and her time. But tonight, she would allow herself a moment of satisfaction. They had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest. They had found something very different. And they would carry the memory of that discovery with them for the rest of their lives. In the years that followed, the story of the defeat spread across the galaxy. It was told in whispers in trading posts and shouted in taverns on 100 different worlds. It became a legend, then a myth, then a warning that parents told their children. Do not go to Earth. The humans are waiting. And they are not afraid. 300 cycles after the failed invasion, a historian named completed the official account of what became known as the disaster at Sol. He spent decades interviewing survivors, studying battle records, and piecing together exactly what had happened during those terrible hours when the mightiest fleet in Imperial history was torn apart by a species that should have been easy prey. His conclusion was simple and terrifying. The humans had been preparing for the long before they even knew the humans existed. They had studied the tactics of every known spacefaring civilization. They had analyzed the strengths and weaknesses of every weapon system they could find information about. And they had built a defense network specifically designed to counter the most common strategies used by aggressive alien species. But that was not what made them dangerous. What made the humans dangerous was their mindset. They did not think about war the way other species did. They did not see it as a last resort or a necessary evil. They saw it as a fundamental part of existence, something to be studied and mastered and embraced. Every human child grew up hearing stories about great battles and heroic warriors. Every human society celebrated its military victories and mourned its defeats. Every human government devoted enormous resources to developing new and better ways to kill. This was not normal. This was not healthy. This was not the way intelligent species were supposed to behave. But it was effective. The humans had turned their dysfunction into a superpower. They had channeled their violent tendencies into a military capability that no other species could match. They had become the apex predators of the galaxy, not despite their savage nature, but because of it. History ended with a recommendation that was simple and direct. The Empire should add its voice to the chorus of warnings about Earth. It should share its experience with every civilization it encountered. It should do everything in its power to ensure that no other species made the same mistake that High Commander had made. Because the alternative was too terrible to contemplate. The humans were out there, watching and waiting. They had proven that they could defend there against any threat, and was not certain that they would remain content with defense forever. What would happen when the humans decided to expand beyond their tiny corner of the galaxy? What would happen when they turned their terrifying military capabilities outward, toward the species that had looked down on them for so long? Did not know, and he did not want to find out. Neither did anyone else. And so the warnings spread from one civilization to the next, carrying the message that had been echoed throughout history. Do not go to Earth. The Empire did not listen, but everyone else did. And the humans continued their existence, fighting among themselves, building ever more powerful weapons, preparing for threats that might never come. They did not know that they had become the most feared species in the galaxy. They did not know that alien civilizations told horror stories about them to frighten each other. They were just humans, just living their lives, just doing what they had always done. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. Because if the humans ever realized just how powerful they had become, if they ever turned their attention to the rest of the galaxy with intent to conquer rather than defend, then the warnings would not matter anymore. Nothing would. The universe would simply become whatever the humans decided it would be. And there would be nothing anyone could do to stop them. But for now, the humans remained on their small blue world, unaware of the fear they inspired, content to live their violent, chaotic, impossibly dangerous lives. And the rest of the galaxy watched them from a safe distance, hoping that this state of affairs would continue forever. Because the alternative was too terrible to imagine. On the bridge of a trading ship passing through a system far from Earth, a young alien merchant asked his captain why they were taking such a long detour around that section of space. The captain looked at his chart, at the small yellow star marked with warning symbols and prohibition notices. "There are humans there," he said simply. "Humans, I have heard of them. They do not sound so dangerous." The captain laughed, but there was no humor in it. That is what the thought, that is what everyone thinks until they learn the truth. What truth? The captain turned to face his young crew member, his eyes filled with the kind of wisdom that only comes from experience. The truth is that the universe is full of dangerous things, predators and monsters and forces that could destroy us without even noticing. But none of them, not a single one, is as dangerous as the creatures living on that small blue world. But why? They are not even a spacefaring species. They are now, and they were dangerous even before they left their planet. They spent thousands of years developing the perfect ways to kill each other. They created weapons that could end all life on their world. They fought wars that killed millions of their own kind, and they did it for reasons that no other species can understand. The captain pointed at the distant star. That is why we go around. That is why everyone goes around, because the humans are not like us. They are something different, something broken, something that should not exist but does anyway. You are afraid of them. Yes, and so should you be. So should everyone be. The young merchant looked at the star map, at the tiny dot that represented the human. Do you think they will ever leave their system, come out into the galaxy like the rest of us? The captain was silent for a long moment. I hope not, he finally said. I pray to every god I know that they stay where they are, fighting each other forever, because if they ever stop fighting among themselves and turn their attention outward. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The young merchant understood, and he added his own silent prayer to his captain's. Let the humans stay on Earth. Let them never come for us. Please, please. The ship continued on its long detour, avoiding the human system by a margin of several light years. It was not far enough. Nothing was far enough. But it was the best they could do. And sometimes that had to be enough.